Thank you, Coach. I'd like to give the opportunity, anybody want to go refresh their drink, because this one might take a little bit. So, first of all, I'd like to say that it's amazing what a couple of pizzas and a case of beer will get you at a Hall of Fame committee meeting. I would like to congratulate the other inductees and the team on their induction into the Hall of Fame. I can't tell you how much of an honor it is to be recognized along with all these other great players, coaches, and teams already in the Hall of Fame. It will be nice to see my picture on the wall when I come to games. My only hope is that my kids won't draw funny mustaches and devil horns on it during the day in school. I would like to accept my induction on behalf of all the small town sports grinders out there. This brings to mind my favorite sports cliche of all time. Grind regularly, celebrate rarely. I'm sorry, I don't remember who said it, but it has always stirred something inside of me. What it means to me is to do your job today to the best of your ability and worry about the rewards later. If you played team sports, you know who these people were. They were the ones who did the dirty work that wasn't easily recognized by most people, other than the coaches and people who really understood the game. I was one of those people. I was never close to being the most talented people on any team I ever played on. In my own graduating class of 1987 alone, I have two teammates, Glenn Brown and Kerry Swift, who are already in the Hall of Fame. And I realized early on that my job on these teams was to stand back, let these guys do their job, and take as much of the credit as I possibly could. Now I know today is not the day to be humble, and don't get me wrong, I was a very good player. 3-year starter, first team all FCVC, first team all District 10, but that alone would not be good enough to be selected into the Hall of Fame. I'm standing before you today because of my nearly 20-year career as a player and coach with the Blue Devil Volleyball program. I feel it was easily the most successful time in the program's history, and I feel I was an important part of it. People I have to thank, my parents, Jim and Karen, because let's face it, without them, none of this is possible. A lot of people get up here and talk about their childhood and say what a struggle it was. I can honestly say that my childhood was one of a Norman Rockwell painting. I grew up playing sports and listening to the Rocky IV soundtrack over and over again. I never really knew what struggle was until later on in life. I have my parents to thank for that. My father didn't see me play a lot of sports growing up. He was a union iron worker who worked out of town a lot. To be honest, of the sports he did see, his voice was the voice of what you did wrong or could do better. Now, he didn't do it out of meanness or spite. He did it because he cared about me with tough love. I know that society today stresses about being positive, but I am a firm believer that you need that voice in your head to bring up your weaknesses so you can recognize them and work on changing them. It's called balance. So, Dad, thank you. My mother was the person who was always there. She took us to every practice, every sports camp, and was at every game. I remember my junior year of volleyball, District 10 championship game, and looking through the gymnasium door and seeing my mom pacing back and forth in the lobby. She was too nervous to sit and watch the game. If you've ever watched me coach sports over the years, you'll notice that I'm always pacing back and forth on the sidelines. Guess where I got it from? So Mom and Dad, thank you. I love you. My brothers, Jamie and Pat. People say coaching your kids is one of the hardest things you can do. I have coached both my kids and my brothers, and I can unequivocally say that coaching your siblings is much harder. An example of this is if you tell your kids how to do something in sports and they don't want to hear it, they will roll their eyes and shake their heads. Your brothers will tell you to do sexually explicit things to yourself over and over again. Both my brothers were excellent volleyball players. I consider my brother Pat to be the greatest player Cambridge has ever had. And if you ask a lot of people, Jamie probably had the best set of hands Cambridge has had. I consider myself to be part of the first family of Cambridge volleyball. I love both you guys, and I am proud to be one of the Mott boys. A lot of things I did as a player in high school was done trying to impress a pretty blonde girl in the stands. Unfortunately then, just as now, I don't think she was all that impressed with me. Later on, that same pretty girl put up with me being away coaching and never complained. Tammy, we have grown up together, and you have seen my entire sports career. Thank you for the support, and words cannot say how much I love you. My coaches and teachers, Mr. Mumaw and Mr. Hobson, the only gym teachers I ever had. They helped develop me as a person and as an athlete. Mr. Mumaw taught many generations of Cambridge athletes their first love of sports. He was my elementary basketball coach and volleyball coach, along with being my junior high football coach. With Mr. Hobson, I remember District 10 volleyball championship day at school. Swifty and I had volleyball for gym class and we were warming up. Mr. Hobson comes over and says, just what do you two yahoos think you're doing? I don't need one of these other guys coming under the net and rolling your ankle, which with Kerry was a very distinct possibility. Go down to the library and read about how good you guys are in the paper. The D'Arcangelo brothers in basketball. This is where I became a first ballot Hall of Famer in the fine art of running suicides over and over and over again. Tom Brown in basketball, one of the first people to believe in me in sports. Jack Hobson in volleyball. He only coached me for 1 year of varsity volleyball, but it was the funnest year I ever had. Coaches Putney and Coral, football. Football coaches who could yell and scream and laugh in the same breath. Coach Nottingham taught me that you have to do it until you get it right. Then you do it right over and over again until it becomes second nature. He always appreciated my consistency on the football field, even though I only weighed 145 pounds and looked like an Auschwitz survivor out there playing football. Coach Dean in basketball. He took us on the greatest road trip of all time, basketball camp to Maine. I feel bad that we let Coach down in the second half of the season, our senior year. We had something special going on and we let it slip through our fingers. And finally, Coach Welker in volleyball. Easily one of the biggest influences in my life. Coach saw something in me when he started me as a sophomore. Now what that something was, I have no idea. Coach taught me how to play, win, and lose with honor. He taught me to be humble when you win, and how to look a man in the eye, shake his hand, and say, well played when you lose. He taught me that if you are part of something, that your actions and your words represent that something. I remember as a freshman, he would let me sit on a milk crate in the back of the van to go to varsity tournaments. Yes, just think about how much trouble he would have got in today. But don't worry, Coach, I'm sure the statute of limitations is up and you're getting in trouble. I appreciated him doing this because it let me be part of the varsity team. And finally, he taught me to believe in myself. And for that, I owe the man a debt that I can never pay. Because from all this, he helped me form an identity. And as a teenager, there was nothing more important than having an identity and being part of something. Now, unfortunately, this identity was that of a dumb jock, but it was an identity, nonetheless. Coach, for the 1000th time in my life, thank you. My teammates. One of the most important things sports has ever taught me is that it's not about the wins and losses, and it's not even about the journey. It's who you go through the journey with. It was a pleasure to play with the guys I played with. We had a lot of fun. We laughed. We yelled at each other. We cried with both joy and sorrow. It was enjoyable to do the things we did with the guys we had. These guys made me a better person, and I'm thankful for it. First, my football teammates, of which there are way too many to name. There is a mystical blood kinship you form with these guys when you go through a football season. You start the year beating the ever-loving crap out of each other in camp. You go through pain, tiredness, and frustration. Then you finally get to take it out on somebody else during the season. We went through hell, boys, but I wouldn't want to go through it with anybody else. Thomas Andrews. Though I only played volleyball with Thomas, he was on the camera crew that taped our football and basketball games, so he was always around. In volleyball, he helped push the team in practice and made us a better team. I've known Thomas my entire life, and he always lets me know that he would have done it better than me, no matter what we were doing. But in all seriousness, a better friend you'll never find. So Thomas, thank you for always being there. And now the people I played 2 or 3 sports with. Paul Leandro in basketball and volleyball. Quiet consistency. Never complained and did his job. I'll take 100 of him any day of the week and twice on Sunday. John Tabid Turner. Football, basketball, and volleyball. Trust me, we only needed one of Tabid. We would never get to hear ourselves think if there was any more than one of them. The fire and passion of our teams, he was our yeller and screamer. Rob Schmidt, football, basketball, and volleyball. Schmitty was in the same boat as me. 2 skinny little runts that didn't know their elbows from their buttholes. But he was our wild card. When he was on, he was a superstar. But when he was off, good Lord Almighty, look out. Glenn Brown and Kerry Swift, football, basketball, and volleyball. I mentioned these 2 together because they were the motor that drove our teams. They are also 2 of my closest friends who I played sports with. They deservedly got most of the credit when we won, and behind their backs, most of the blame when we lost. I've always said, if I have Brownie and Swifty on my side, I've got a chance, no matter who I'm playing. As a player, that's all you can ever ask for, is a chance. Guys, I'm honored to join you as the 3rd starter on the 87 team to enter the Hall of Fame. Memories of my playing and coaching career. Winning 2 of 3 junior high volleyball tournaments our 9th grade year. AC-doocy poker games on volleyball road trips. Going to basketball camp in Maine and having Coach Dick Hunt call us a bunch of bleeping candy asses. Making the first big play in Cambridge football playoff history by recovering a fumble on the kickoff against Eisenhower. Being the cleanest player on the field against Conway Valley in a game where the field was an absolute swamp. I stood out like a sore thumb. Playing in the absolute coldest football game in Cambridge football history. District 10 final, our senior year. It was so cold that the camcorders kept shutting down. Rick Lewandowski caught his shoestrings on fire by the space heaters. We lost that game 7-6 on a claimed missed extra point. But I'm here to tell you that I was the end on the extra point team, and that ball went right over the uprights. Not that I'm bitter or anything. At one of Mr. Welker's end of the year parties, having a tire fall off a Tavid's Blazer when we were leaving. The irony of this is that his family owned the tire shop. I remember saying to him as we sat in the middle of the road, let me guess, put that tire on, right, David? Winning the Y League Volleyball Championship 2 years in a row. Sophomore year, state volleyball tournament at Penn State, University main campus. I never played in a gymnasium that was that big and was kind of in awe. We were playing Tunkhannock and their middle hitter hit one of the hardest sucker balls you've ever seen. I was lucky enough to get a good pass on it, but I swear the thing must have gone up 100 feet. I just kept thinking, does this thing ever come down? It's unfortunate that we went from playing from such a nice facility to playing our junior and senior year state tournament in the heated, and I mean heated, confines of IUP Gymnasium. Junior year volleyball match at Maplewood. Big match, and the gym was loud and rocking. I was blocking middle, and Maplewood ran a tandem play with Big Tom Herring hitting. He swung as hard as he could, and I probably had the best block of my life. The gym got so quiet that you could have heard a mouse piss on cotton. Once you get the taste of ruining someone's great hit, it stays with you and changes the game. A great defensive play is worth 5 points of emotion. And finally, early on in my coaching career, playing for the championship of the Meadville JV volleyball tournament. Championship point, and Neil Bullock goes up to hit a sucker ball and almost tears the net down. It is bouncing up and down, but there is no net call. We win. I have never seen so much anger or heard as much vulgarity as I did from the Meadville parents that day. They were yelling and screaming at the refs along with their coaching staff and players. Neil looks at me and asks what we do, coach. I tell him with a big smile on my face, Neil, grab the bleeping trophy and let's get the bleep out of here. I could easily go on for hours with these stories, and trust me, at the bar later on at my house, I probably will. Not much longer, everybody. When most people think of volleyball, they think of hitting is the key to winning, and that's fine. But there are other ways to be successful. My strengths as a player and coach were in other areas, blocking and passing. I was a very good hitter, but there was absolutely no style points in my play, just effectiveness. I never thought about style, I only thought about results. I was not flashy or showy, I just did what needed to be done. And to do that, I never felt I had to be noticed. I didn't have to be the guy who held the trophy at the end. Tell you what, we'll end this thing. There's a little Just some players that I'd like to name throughout the years and stuff that have really meant a lot to me. And a lot of them were on this 1990 team and stuff. Chris Glenn and Sean Humes, seniors. These two, along with an out-of-shape assistant coach, were the ones who pushed the varsity every day in practice. Kevin Manross and Jace Sobby Wallace. These two were on my 8-2 JV team that year, and two of the most coachable kids you ever had. And finally, Greg Slosher. In my opinion, the best blocker Cambridge has ever had. He dominated the power side, being left-handed, hard worker, extremely coachable, a great attitude. My favorite player that I ever coached. Slosh, unfortunately, we are probably never going to be able to take that Edinburgh trip that I promised you 30-some-odd years ago. Some other players from later teams that bring back fond memories. Kevin Taylor, Todd Peterman, Willie Boozer, Ryan McElhaney, and Jeff Ball. So in conclusion, I would like to say how much I love this little town. I'm Cambridge born and Cambridge bred, and when I die, I will be Cambridge dead. My father was a Blue Devil. My brothers were Blue Devils. My nieces and nephews were Blue Devils. And the good Lord willing, and the bureaucrats don't screw it up, my children will be Blue Devils. I'm humbled to be up here, and I'm honored to represent CSHS one last time. And I'd like to end it with a quote from Lou Gehrig. Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. Thank you, and go Blue.